Deep down, you know you're holding yourself back. You know there's a version of you in some parallel universe living the best version of what your life could be, simply killing it. You know what that life looks like, but somehow, some way, you just can't manage to get it together to make it happen in your particular universe. Why is that? Insecurity. You procrastinate because you don't think you'll do a good job. You don't ask her out because you don't think you're good enough. You self-sabotage because you don't think you deserve it. As depressing as it feels, you are not alone. There's almost nothing as universal a human feeling as insecurity, except maybe wanting to get laid and stuffing your face with fat and sugar. But what if I told you there's a better way? A way where you could both be the best version of yourself, rid yourself of all insecurities, and make the world a better place at the same time. Watch to the end of the video, and I'll give you a mental framework to do exactly that. First step is to understand it's not your fault. Insecurity is an unspoken code we all share, ingrained in us from back when we all used to live in small tribes. Sticking to your tribe was the only way to survive. Unfortunately, there were a lot of ways you could get kicked out. Accidentally staring at your chief's fifth wife, or not cleaning out his poop shack when you're supposed to. This goes on and on. And so, being insecure ensured your survival. Because when you're too secure, you get complacent, you get sloppy, less careful, and you missed poop shack duty a third time in a row again, an unforgivable sin. Now that you're kicked out, you're just a big, fat, lonely, juicy piece of meat for all the hungry bears living in the area. Luckily for you, you live in the modern world. 1, the hungry bears have all been evicted from their homes, and 2, being exiled from your cushy job at Google isn't a death sentence it used to be. Whenever I'm feeling insecure, I like to think through the situation rationally. This is a technique therapists call CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, a form of psychotherapy the American Psychology Association states is as effective, possibly even more so, than many of the treatments out there, including psychiatric medication. Fact is, your mind likes to play tricks on you. It still thinks there's a bunch of bears out there waiting to eat your face when you fail, using emotion to manipulate you so you fall in line. But simply take the time to peek behind the curtain, and guess what? You'll realize the naked truth. 80% of the time, you're just scaring yourself. To do this, I ask myself 3 questions. 1, what am I truly afraid of? 2, what's the worst thing that could happen next? And 3, how likely is that to come true? I'll run through these same questions for the 2 other scenarios too, assign probabilities for all of them, and make a little tree diagram. But let's expand the worst case further, since that's what you're fixated on. Let's map it out with specific probabilities. Let's say your biggest fear is being forever alone. Worst case scenario, if you're in a relationship, is then getting dumped, right? What's the worst case scenario after getting dumped? Getting HIV/AIDS from the local stripper, right? Worst case after that is getting your arms and legs amputated by flesh-eating bacteria given your newly immunocompromised state. Worst case after that is you taking refuge in your local paraplegic incel terrorist enclave and getting talked into dyeing your hair neon green. How many worst case scenarios have to line together before your worst fear of being completely undateable come true? To figure out the actual likelihood, just multiply all the probabilities of all the worst case scenarios on your little tree timeline. When you do the actual math, it's probably going to end up being like 0.0001% or something ridiculous like that. And yet, until you do this CBT exercise, your brain can't help but fixate on it. This is nothing but a cognitive distortion of reality, and it has a name. Catastrophizing. You catastrophize when you fixate on the worst possible outcome and treat it as the most likely outcome even when it's clearly not. It's easy to be insecure if your mind is constantly whispering poison into your ear. Speaking of worst case scenarios, the best case scenario is to start using Grammarly. You may think Grammarly is just a spell checker, but it goes way beyond that. Think of it as your very own trusted AI writing partner. Always available and always willing to help. It doesn't matter what your goal is, making a resume, writing an essay, or drafting a cover letter, Grammarly takes your writing game to the next level. Best part is it's incredibly convenient. Instead of going to a separate website, it integrates into exactly where you work. For example, let's say I'm in college and I'm working on my resume for the first time. Grammarly transforms into a professional guidance counselor, giving me actionable tips to stand out. Then, when I'm ready to apply to an internship, I'll ask Grammarly to use my resume to draft the best cover letter possible. And presto, Grammarly makes it happen, all done in less than a minute. And that's all for free too. When you upgrade to Grammarly Pro, you'll unlock a bunch of other features too, like being able to ensure your writing matches the exact tone you want to convey. How cool is that? Stop waiting, sign up and upgrade to Grammarly Pro for 20% off with the link below. Now, back to the video. Second reason you're insecure is because you think too much about yourself. You're so lost in this perspective that you've tricked yourself into thinking the whole world is thinking about you too. This cognitive distortion has a name as well. It's called the spotlight effect. Your insecurity is really just stage fright. It's natural to get nervous if you're playing the lead role on some great stage the entire world is watching with keen interest. But you're not. Turn off the spotlight and you'll realize the auditorium is empty. No one's watching. Everyone's too busy worrying about being on stage themselves. You aren't the main character. In fact, you don't even have a supporting role. Most people don't even know you exist, or if they do, they barely care. If you're lucky, you'll get a chance to play the lead support in just a few people's lives. Your spouse, your parents, maybe your kids, maybe just a few friends. That's really it. Those are the only people who are maybe thinking about you on a more regular basis. For the vast majority of people outside of this sphere, you are a nobody. And when you die, you become an even bigger nobody. Most people don't realize how thick of a veil anonymity really is, how hard it is to be remembered. In a few decades, outside the minds of your immediate family, barely a trace of you will exist in this world. Wait one more generation, and you completely disappear. I mean, think about it. How many of you know your great-grandparents? And that's your direct blood connection. It may be counterintuitive to say, but becoming famous is kind of hard, and staying famous is even harder. If you don't believe me, just let's do some quick math. There's about 8 billion people on this planet. If you use Wikipedia as the barometer of fame, the number of famous people currently living with their own Wikipedia page is around 1 million. Or 1 out of every 8,000 living people. This is level 1, aka Wikipedia level fame. Even this is overstated because 1, you can technically create a Wikipedia page for yourself even if no one knows you. And 2, how many of these people do you actually recognize? If you want to become a household name, you need level 2 fame. How many people are at level 2? List out all the names of all the people still alive today that the average Joe would know. How many do you think you'd come up with? Maybe 100 people? So that's roughly 1 out of 80 million people. Now, if you want level 3 fame, i.e. be a household name even hundreds of years after your death, that number gets even smaller. That's like what? Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, and Jesus, right? And we aren't really even thinking about them as people anymore. They're more just abstract concepts now. This was hammered home not too long ago when I found myself staring at a black and white photo of some famous people back in the day. I legitimately spent an hour trying to find this photo on the internet, but sadly, I could not. And it was cutting into my snack time. Instead, I'm going to use my amazing art skills to recreate the experience for you here. The photo was of 12 people sitting together. They're all famous actors, radio stars, late night show hosts, household names with likely millions of fans tuning in every night. And yet the entire comment section were people asking who the F these people were. I for one could not recognize a single one either. The same eerie phenomenon strikes me whenever I watch old recordings. Take this colorized footage of Londoners in 1931. Seems pretty ordinary, right? Apart from all the staring, it's just a busy city bustling with activity. Realize the sobering fact though, that almost everyone in this video is now likely dead. Even if you were born on that exact day, you'd be almost 100. And just like that, an entire city's population just poof into thin air. I was in an antique shop the other day and found myself struck by another photo on the wall. 1937, birthday luncheon for Hugo Jekyll at the Waldorf Astoria. Sounds important, right? These people definitely look important. upper crust elite perhaps, I couldn't help but fixate on the boy sitting up front. He is probably smiling, but for some reason he looks sad to me, almost like he knew the rest of his life would amount to nothing, and instead he'd be forever trapped in this one particular photo, a photo of no particular importance, forever anonymous. And that got me thinking about the rest of the members of the dinner party there. They're all probably self-absorbed in their own identities, and a lifetime of insecurities tucked away under shiny suits and fancy dresses. I couldn't help but wonder, where are all these people now? Did they ever overcome the struggles of their lives? How many worries were they able to let go of? Would things be different if they knew they'd be forever forgotten, immortalized as mere strangers in a photo people like me speculate on in some random antique shop before moving on to more important matters? Like why everything tastes like chicken, and how many balloons it would actually take to float a small baby into the air. I know, important stuff. In the face of certain utter destruction, everything sort of becomes absurd in the end. Death is the Great Liberator. When he's hanging out waiting for you just around the corner, you start to gain some perspective. Maybe having perfect chiseled abs isn't that big of a deal. Maybe trying to get everyone to like me isn't worth my time. Just having the people I care about love me is maybe more than enough. One day in the future, everyone you know will become forgotten ghosts too. And by the time that happens, no one will care about the crooked nose you hate so much or the big fat ass you so desperately want to firm up. We all take life way too seriously. This is the third reason why we are all insecure. I talk about this analogy in my Substack. Look anywhere on the ground and you'll likely see an ant busting his balls trying to bring a leaf back to base camp. The little dude's about to die in a few days, maybe even a few hours. He's going to be eaten by some bird or stepped on by some kid before lunchtime, and yet he's taking his job way too seriously. Naively, stupidly, he continues to tug that leaf back to camp like the good little soldier he is. Are you not that ant too? What leaf are you desperately holding onto right now? We're so busy trying to make our lives perfect that we fail to see the absurdity of it all. The moments I feel most insecure are always the moments I take myself way too seriously, when I'm too self-absorbed and invested in my own success. There's a ratio in all of our lives. I call it the ratio of self-obsession. Let's say 1,000,000 thoughts into your head in a given day. How many of those are focused on your own well-being, and how many are about the well-being of others? For most, that ratio is probably 99% self and 1% other, right? Interestingly, that's the literal definition of what being self-centered is all about. Centered on the self. It's always about what's on my to-do list, my agenda. Does this shirt make me look good? What do I get out of this? Why do I feel crappy today? Life is good when I feel good. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world looks like. Oh, hi Bob, you look like shit today. What happened to you? Anyway, I don't care. Back to me. Me. It's an epidemic of egoism. I'm in the self-help productivity space of YouTube, and so yeah, it makes sense to be invested in yourself and want to improve yourself. But at some point in time, if you want to get to the next phase of development, if you want to truly ascend, you actually have to let go of yourself, to get over yourself, to simply be. Fact is, you don't have to wait for death to finally be free. Just take the initiative and kill your ego instead. The death of ego is how you truly rid yourself of all insecurity, how you learn to live your best life, how you ironically become the best version of yourself. If you have no ego to protect, you have nothing to be insecure about. It's how you finally let go of that stupid leaf you've been carrying for all your life. Where are you even going with that thing? Let go and enjoy the breeze a little. Because you never know when that stupid bird or kid is coming to, oh shoot, never mind, you're already dead. Being self-absorbed is the quickest way to neuroses, to being unhappy, to narcissism, to self-imprisonment. Why do you think the best way to be happy is to help others? Because it's nice to turn your attention away from me island once in a while and focus on other people's problems instead. By visiting them on their little island, you gain some perspective and feel mentally a little bit less lonely. And then you realize, wow, everyone's pretty much the same. We're all going through the same problems. We're all feeling the same absurd insecurities. I'm really not all that different. If I can help someone else feel a little bit better, maybe I can do the same for myself too. And that's how you make the world a better place while helping yourself out at the same time. Any rate, I hope this video was helpful. If you want ideas and stories just like this, but in article form, sign up for my Substack. Otherwise, if you want digestible productivity tips sent to your inbox, sign up for the official SpoonFed Ideas newsletter. If you want your very own custom-made character doodle to be part of all future video scenes I draw, then join these fine folks and become a Patreon member. You can be yourself, a dog, or even a rock. Possibilities are endless. And as always, best way to support the channel is to subscribe. Go tell your friends, your grandma, and your pet hamster. Smell you later.